Olga sat and looked silently at the woman sitting across from her. Her mother, for Olga, the word evoked absolutely no positive emotions. Except for pain and resentment. The resentment for her ruined childhood, for her youth, which was almost non-existent, and most importantly, for her unborn child. For the baby who, at her mother's bidding, had never seen the world. Alia was in a hurry. Today she was a little late in school, and now this fact boded her great trouble. And so it happened. Her mother explained to Alia long and tediously that she was an ungrateful daughter and did not love anybody but herself. At the end of her tirade it was announced that she had been punished for the rest of the term and that she could forget about her friends. After that, Mom left on another date, and Olga finally was able to breathe a sigh of relief. She changed quickly and then went into the kitchen. As expected, there was nothing cooked in the apartment and there was a mountain of dirty dishes in the sink. Alia sighed and looked at her watch. She calculated that she would not have time to cook anything because in half an hour she had to go to the kindergarten to pick up her brother and her daughter. She was very hungry. She decided she would have time to eat her sandwich and cook dinner when she brought her little brother home. And so she did. She ate a butter sandwich and hurried to kindergarten. On the way back, she had to go to the store because there was almost nothing to cook with at home. I bought fresh loaf, pasta and ready-made stuffing. I decided they were going to have noodles for dinner. Ollie didn't have time to make anything else. In addition to cooking dinner, she also had to clean the house, do the dishes, and do a little laundry. She also had to work with her little brother and do a lot of homework. At home, she immediately began her chores. Cooking dinner did not take long, but the dishes were a bit of a mess. She had visitors again in her and her mother's absence. A few empty wine bottles in the garbage can also testify to this. While her sister was busy, little Tinkerbell was drawing and playing with his toys. Alia looked into her and her sister's room several times and thanked God for giving her such a quiet and peaceful brother. When everything had been done, she and her brother had dinner. Then she played and practiced with her brother, gave him a bath, and put him to bed. Her mother was late again, which was the norm rather than the exception. Alia sat down to her homework, but she couldn't finish it. Fatigue had its effect. Having decided that she would finish them tomorrow at recess, she went to bed and immediately fell into a deep sleep. This was the rhythm of life Alia had always had, though no. It had been a little easier before her brother came along, but she never regretted having Susti. She adored her brother and practically replaced his mother because Ina, their mother, was always busy. Either she was at work or she was arranging her personal life because she thought that having two children was not a hindrance to a still young, beautiful woman. She worked as a manager in a clothing store. She looked the part that suited her position, so there was no shortage of suitors. She took full advantage of this and did not deny herself anything. She put all the responsibilities of the home and the upbringing of her youngest son on the shoulders of her eldest daughter. She thought it was perfectly natural. A daughter should help her mother, who worked tirelessly for her children's well-being, and it was all right that the elder daughter had no time for her studies or for herself. She will have time to get on with her life. She has her whole life ahead of her, Rhina liked to say to her friends. She helps out around the house a little, but that's what a girl is. Olga did not know whether her mother really thought so or whether she was just trying to justify herself to her friends, but she was more inclined to the second option. It was very much like her selfish, narcissistic mother. This rhythm of life continued with Olga until her graduation from high school. During this time she had 3 stepfathers, but she did not accept any of them as her father. She considered only the man she was born to be her father, though she had not seen him for a long time. She and her mother divorced when Alia was only 5 years old. She hasn't had any contact with her father since then. But she had no father at all. Of course she had one, but nobody knew who he was or where he came from, and her mother did not like to talk about it. That's why Sustya grew up without knowing who his father was. So the children grew up with ever-changing fathers and a mother who had recently become a heavy drinker. Although she thought she was doing well and living a fine life, she didn't care what anyone else thought. After high school, Alia chose to become a teacher. She liked working with children and considered it her vocation. Olga left home with a heavy heart. She felt awfully sorry for her little brother, but she simply could not do otherwise. She consoled herself with the thought that Ina was his mother and would not allow anything bad to happen to her son. But here Olga was very much mistaken. She was in her second year when a great misfortune befell her family. Her mother and her friends were resting on the river, and because she had no one to leave her son with, she took him with her. As everyone in the company of Ina that day was quite drunk, there was no one to look after the boy and a terrible thing happened. The boy drowned. When Alia found out, she was shocked. She couldn't stop crying for 24 hours. At her son's funeral, she sobbed and mourned, but Olga, standing beside her, could not believe her tears. It was then that Olga realized for the first time that she hated her mother. She hated her mother with all her soul. After her mother's death, she tried not to come home at all. From a neighbor with whom she kept in touch, she knew that her mother drank heavily and that there were always people in the apartment. Alia was not surprised by this fact. There was only one thing that surprised her. How could her mother still work in such a way? But it soon became clear to her. The owner of the store where her mother worked was not a young man, but a man who was very fond of the female sex. Mother was having an affair with him. That's what kept her afloat, though it didn't last very long. Scopa's mother lost her job after all. Alia was in her third year, and, to be honest, she did not care about her mother's life at all. Alia's life changed a lot at that time. She met a man whom she loved with all her soul, and this love was mutual. Some time later, the young people decided to get married. Her grandmother, Olga's boyfriend, lived in the city where they studied and was happy to take the young couple in. Moreover, upon meeting her, she liked Olga a lot. The wedding was more than modest. The closest people were present. Olga did not inform her mother about the wedding, nor did she tell her that she was about to become a grandmother. When Olga found out that she was expecting a child, she and Anna did not have the slightest doubt about whether she would keep the baby or not. It was decided that, when the baby was born, Olga would take an academic leave in order to take care of it, but the young people's plans were not fated to come true. Somehow, Jane found out about their daughter's wedding and the baby's dressing and came to them. She and Alia got into a verbal altercation, which developed, on the part of Ina, into something more. She pushed Alia and she fell and hit her belly, which caused her to hemorrhage and give birth prematurely. The baby did not survive, and after the operation, Olga was never able to become a mother again. Naturally, Olga could not forgive her mother and stopped all communication with her. They did not see each other for 10 long years. Everything worked out well in Olga's life. He and Olga were still together and loved each other. Ivan put up with the idea that he and Olga would never have children. He tried to persuade his wife to adopt the child, but Olga was strongly against it. Why? She never explained it to him. Ivan thought that Olga simply did not want to raise someone else's child, but it was not like that at all. Alia was just afraid. She was afraid she would not protect the child again, just as she had not been able to protect her own son. This fear haunted her, and she could not get rid of it, even though she wanted to. Otherwise, Olga's life was not too bad. She was surrounded by people she loved, and the one who had brought her so much grief was simply cut out of her life. Olga thought it would be gone forever, but it turned out not, and now Jane was sitting in front of her, waiting to see the only family member she had left in this life. Alia did not expect to see her mother at all. As usual, she was preparing dinner for Ivan, who was about to return from work. So the ringing of the doorbell did not surprise her at all. "You forgot your keys again, or you lost them. I'll give you hell," Alia thought, and with a smile on her face went to open the door for her hapless husband, but behind the door stood the man she had expected to see. Of course she recognized her mother at once, though she had changed a great deal over the years. Once beautiful and successful, she was now a thin, unkempt woman, haggard with alcohol and a loose life, who stood there smiling at Olga with a toothless smile. Olga did not want to let her mother into the house, but she could not keep her on the landing either. It was a shame in front of the neighbors. In the apartment, mother began to complain to Olga about her life. It turned out that she was sick, cirrhosis of the liver. She didn't have much time left to live, so she came to see her daughter. She said she needed help. Because of her illness, it was hard to cope with herself, and she needed money for treatment. So that, as she claimed, she could live a little longer in this world. Olga looked at her mother and remained silent. The only thing she understood was that she felt no pity for the woman. She did not care about her. While she was telling Olga about her difficult life, Ivan returned. He too recognized her and was very surprised to see her in his apartment. Ivan looked at his wife in wonder. She caught his gaze and said quietly, "Aha, show the woman out. She has to go now." He looked at Olga with an incomprehensible look. "Darling," she shouted and fell to her knees. "Darling, forgive my good-for-nothing mother." Alia looked at Ina and said just as calmly, "Mother, if I had to forgive my mother, I think I would. But I never had a mother. Never. So there was no one to forgive." With these words, Olga left the room. She didn't hear Ivan accompany her and close the door behind her. Olga sobbed silently into her pillow. 2 years passed. Olga finally made up her mind, and she and Ivan adopted a boy. Now she and Ivan were absolutely happy and even began to think about their daughter. Since then, Olga has heard about her mother only once. She received a call from the very neighbor with whom Olga had kept in touch before, informing her that Jane had died. Olga was not at all moved by this fact. She did not feel even a drop of regret about it. She and Ivan sent money for the Pahina, but they did not go there themselves. This page of Olga's life was over, and she did not regret it at all. As scary as it sounded,